I can hear you, but your voice is a bit distant, Andy. And I'm hearing a bit of an echo. I think two machines are on.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you, but I can hear some kind of echo repeating after
That's
you. I think the one
okay.
of the machines can be muted.
Okay. Well, I hope you have enjoyed your tea break. There is a little bit of feedback. Um, it is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Girma Mohammed, who is joining us from the UK, which is, I think, probably a bit drier than it is here today. But as I already said this morning, Dr. Girma was the one who wrote this material that we're doing today. So I don't want to take any more of his time. I want to make sure that you have as much time with him as possible. So, Girma, can I hand over to you, please?
Thank you very much, Andy. I'm hearing that this is an Independence Day in Nigeria, and I wish you a happy Independence Day, which is important, and it is good that we are having this conversation in this important day as well. I hope you would find something inspiring to make this day worthwhile in this process as well. I'm sorry that I was not able to be present there in person, which could make things much easier. But so far, the technology seems to be behaving very well. I'll try to share my screen in a moment, and then in the middle, we will have some group conversation. But also in the meantime, I would like to open up the stage for you to ask questions as well if our time allows. Now let me go on to share. Before that, I just would like to express my gratitude for the Bible Society of Nigeria. I have got quite a few friends there, including the GS Pastor Samuel Sandusi Grace and others who have been working with me very closely in the process of delivering Abli Forum in Abuja last year. And I also would like to express my gratitude to my colleague, Dr. Andy, for making this possible. And I'm sure lots of work has been done, put together in order to make this possible. Let me go on and share my screen now. Just let me know if you see this screen.
We can see your screen. It's fine.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm sure that you, Dr. Andy, has kind of unpacked the concept of presence, especially being present faithfully in different ways in relation to God Himself, in relation to the created order, and then human beings, and so on and so forth. At this stage, I would like to go into talking about presence in a more kind of abstract language, but also that also will be accentuated in a practical sense later on. I would like to talk about existence and presence. Let me start with the telling a story. I wish I was in person there to see you. But those of you who are men and with kids, I don't know how many of you have been in a hospital together when your wife gave birth to your kids. It is a fascinating place to be, full of joy, but also full of pain until the kid, the baby, comes as well. To be there with your wife is, I found to be an important instance in my life. Because in Africa, where I grew up in Ethiopia, I was not allowed to be present when my wife is in labor. In fact, I need to go away to a bit of a distance, and I'm asked to kind of undo my belt as a sign of prayer and kind of openness, and so on and so forth. That is a cultural thing that we do in Ethiopia when our wives give birth to babies. I have heard that the same is true in Zambia as well last time. But in Nigeria, you could have your own ritual that you do there. But it is a fascinating place because at the same time there are contradictory things happen in that ward if you are in a hospital, crying babies, and also celebrating families. And that contradiction really fascinated me, and I was thinking about that for a bit of a time. Once I shared that to my friend who happened to be a medical doctor, and I asked him, why is it universal for all babies to cry when they come to this world? In fact, we get worried when the babies are not crying when they are birthed, when they are born, and we would doubt their health. And the crying is a sort of universal norm for them to announce their emergence in the world. And they don't sing, they don't do anything, they don't jump around, but they do cry. And also the fact that the babies cry, the kids, or the family celebrate it, it shows, it kind of typifies the contradiction of our life, the world in which we live, that two contradictory voices constantly accompany us in our journey. But then I asked my friend who is a medical doctor, why is it the case that the babies are crying always when they are born? And he said jokingly, maybe they are saying this is the worst day of my life. The logic there is, I mean, they are just born, and they are just have come to the world, and they are announcing that this is the worst day of their life. He said that as a joke, but there is an element or a grain of truth for that. Because when we come to this world, we do not necessarily come to a world that is willing to accommodate us as we are. Our mother's womb is probably the most convenient place to live. You get everything, and you get the best. Everything is measured, and you don't need to work hard, and you don't need to go around, you don't need to negotiate with others, but you enjoy everything in the convenience of your mother's womb, and everything is measured and the best. But as soon as you are born, you need to be accustomed to weather, to a way of dressing, to the culture, and to the family that is ready to domesticate you rather than to accept you as it is. And from that point on, human beings' presence would become a struggle, and an act of negotiation. Everything you do is an act of negotiation. So this takes us to two philosophers that I projected on the screen. And this existence, being present, is a big problem for many thinkers and philosophers. The first philosopher that you see on your right-hand side is named René Descartes. Rene Descartes, from his young age, really struggled with his existence, and then he came to a space that he doubted whether he exists or not. And he would say, I might be dressing up my gown, and I might be enjoying the fireplace in a bitter winter day. But then he says it could be a dream. It could be a mirage. I might not even exist. Then he goes on to kind of embrace doubt as a way of knowing the world. For him, doubting became an epistemic framework, to use that mouthful word. Epistemology, as some of you might know, is the study of how we know what we know. So the way he knows the world was framed by doubt. He would say, I doubt everything, and there is nothing that I don't doubt. But later on, he came to a conclusion. Doubting is something that I do routinely. And he said, there is actually something that I don't doubt. That is, I don't doubt that I'm doubting. That's all. The conclusion is, there is a doubting agent, so I must exist. So his slogan, academic slogan, as it were, is known as, I think, therefore I am. If I am thinking, there has to be a thinking agent. So if I am the thinking agent, then I must exist. That is how he solved his problem of existence. But then that became a kind of a default point of Western academic life. It is called rationality, reasoning out to prove the existence of yourself. So he became he was dubbed as a father of the Western philosophy, and his school of thought is still called Cartesian school. But then later on, we have this scholar or a philosopher of whom you see on the left side. He said, I mean, Cartesian thinking is crazy. Very few people doubt their existence. In fact, he would say, we are far too busy with our lives to engage in doubting our own existence. Many times, we are externally oriented beings. We don't take long time, a time of contemplation and thinking, to prove our existence. And instead, we invest a lot to understand the outside world, the meaning of existence. So the existence by itself is not a problem for this scholar. His name is Martin Heidegger, a German philosopher. So Martin Heidegger would say, existence by itself is not a problem. What is the problem is the meaning of existence. Why we exist. And what our existence tells is what is the problem. Then he wrote a famous book that wrestles with the time and existence, and his philosophy is called being there. In German, it's called Dasein. Being there. If I am somewhere, why am I there? Why do I exist? Why am I present there? Finding the meaning for my existence should be something that worries me, something that needs to capture my imagination, rather than asking the question of whether I exist or not. So what he's trying to say is, existence is something that we can take for granted. But something that we cannot get for granted is the meaning of our existence. That is very, very important for leadership. Let me bring you to African thinking as well, philosophy. in Africa, our existence is, or the meaning of our existence is defined by relationship. The Cartesian thinking is I think, therefore I am. Whereas in Africa, we say that I relate, therefore I am. So relationship is very important. We find the meaning of existence, the meaning of presence through being related, being in touch, being in connection with someone. That is why we understand the whole existence as chain in Africa, in African philosophy. The chain, at the top of the chain is God himself, followed by the spirit world, and then followed by dead ancestors, or the people who are died, but we consider them who are still active in our life. But also that is followed by us who are alive at the moment, and then followed by inanimate world like animals and plants and so on and so forth. Those chains do not live in autonomy in African philosophy. Those chains operate in connection to one another. That connection is very important. In order to reach that, we need to climb through those chains of existence. It was fascinating when I grew up in Ethiopia. There was our neighbor who used to bring to his grandfather's graveyard. And this is not a very, very rich person who is milk on the soil, on the ground, but he's a poor guy, and his kids clearly needed those honey and milk. But once I asked him, why do you do this? Why don't you feed yourself and your family with these kids rather than pouring it on the graveyard of your ancestors or your grandfather? And his response was, actually, my grandfather came on my dreams and he told me that he is thirsty. So that is the reason why I am bringing this jar of milk and honey to pour and to feed him. So the assumption is, even when our ancestors are passed on, they are still active. They are still active in our lives. They have a say in our lives. So we need to have amicable and good relationship with them. So this person is assuming if he is not able to feed his dead ancestor, his present life or his future could be in some sort of danger, because it might end up breaking that chain of existence, which is important for him in order to get the meaning of his presence. But then the person that you see on the on that slide, the image is a Cameroonian philosopher, probably one of my favorite philosophers in Africa, Achille Mbembe. Achille Mbembe goes further. It is not only about Ubuntu, this chain, but also he used the language of entanglement. He wrote even a book known as, the title is An Earthly Society. When he talks of earthly society, he is not necessarily talking about human society. He is talking about nature, animals, plants, and stars, and so on and so forth. He goes on to say, we are entangled. When he talks of entanglement, he is not saying it in a negative way, but we are positively entangled. We are meant to, we have this magnetic dimension to our humanity that actively seeks connection and entanglement. When we live together, as we continue to be in contact with each other, that entanglement will become more and more pronounced. So there is no need to refute that entanglement, that connection. What we have to do is to find the meaning of that entanglement. And we need to make a wise use of it. He laments the fact that we as a human society are being fragmented. Being fragmented along civilization, being fragmented along using the cultural fault lines, religious fault lines, and ideological fault lines, and other kind of divisive element and ideas. That, he would say, is unfortunate. He would say, even in the context of colonial project, we have experienced entanglement. The colonial masters who came to Africa, after living sometimes with African society, when they go back home, they found out that they have been entangled with Africans. Subconsciously, they have embraced some elements of African way of life and culture and so on and so forth. That also applies for us, to Africans. They have given us something that we did not imagine, those colonial masters. Some of the things that we have learned from them, it has become part of our life, even when we don't know. So even when it comes to the colonial project, at the moment, he would argue that there is no need to foster animosity between the colonial masters and the colonized. Already that is a fact. Already we are entangled. It is very unfortunate that colonial project took place. All sorts of exploitation and undermining and abuse that has happened. It is unfortunate, but we need to go beyond the pain to find that point of hybridity that we have become. And in technology in our society that we are living in a kind of in a free movement of ideas and information and so on and so forth, that entanglement is becoming even more and more a thing. It is not strange to see young people acting like a Hollywood stars in African villages, because in one or the other way, they are experiencing of that entanglement. Because it is unavoidable. And the question is, what can we do with it? How can we be meaningfully present in a society and culture in a time that is kind of imposing entanglement on us? That aspect of presence is really important to think for us about, because it shows the complexity and dynamism of our presence in a society that is increasingly connected. Let's move to a biblical idea of presence. When you think of this, the issue of existence, the issue of presence to the biblical world, the Bible and its narrative does not foster doubt like René Descartes. And it doesn't also foster suspicion and bitterness to the existing situation like Martin Heidegger. Because Martin Heidegger's point of view is a bit bitter in a way. The existing culture is willing to swallow me. It doesn't accommodate me as I am. So I am trapped in this constant mode of negotiation with existing. It is true in a way. But then what the Bible doesn't impose is that sort of bitterness. But within the biblical world, what we see, especially when you see the interaction and dynamism during the creation process in the Garden of Eden, what you see is recognition. Adam found himself present. He found himself in a state of existence. He has never doubted his existence. He has never questioned his existence. He just recognized his existence. What is even more fascinating is when Eve was created from his own body, he didn't go into science. Who is she? Where did she come from? I didn't know this woman or this being. He didn't confront God with those kind of the questions. He immediately recognized. Recognition. But also more than recognition, he went into the process of meaning creation. When animals passed by him, he started to give names. Naming is very important because naming gives identity. Naming secures your uniqueness. Naming gives you a specific place in your family, in society, and wherever you are. Yes, we take name as symbols. We would say it doesn't matter. But in some culture, people are very, very sensitive about mispronouncing your names, especially that is the case in the Western culture. For example, in terms of pronouncing my name in my workplace, sometimes, how do I pronounce your name not to offend you? I would always say, no, I understand. I'm not going to be offended. As far as I recognize it is my name, don't worry. But name is very important as well, because it helps you to be recognized as you. So it is the meaning of who you are in a way. So that was what Adam was doing, recognizing and meaning creation process was what was taking place rather than doubt and bitterness and so on and so forth. That gives us kind of parameter, that gives us a model how to deal with our world that is very complex. Lots of complex dynamism is going on. We are there to recognize the other, and we are there to ascribe the meaning for individuals the way God has ascribed meaning to them. We are there to respect the agency of that. That was what Adam was doing. He respected the agency of Eve and the agency of even creation by meaning creation process. Sometimes the way we are present, when we impose ourselves, it might be damaging to the meaning of others and to the agency of others. Now, you need to recognize at this moment that Adam was in a space of power. When God assigned him to give names to things, that gives you lots of power. And he used his power to empower others, to help others to have meaning wherever they are assigned. Now, it is good as leaders for us to ask, wherever we are empowered, do we disfigure meaning, or do we use our power to accentuate, to highlight, to bring forth the meaning that is embedded on someone? That really is important. I'm sure with Andy, you have seen some modalities of presence. And one of the modality that you have seen is what we would call passive presence. This is instinctual, even cyclic and dormant. It is a kind of presence that you do things because others are doing. You do things because others are telling you to do. You do things because you are receiving an order or command from others without you trying to give meaning to what you are doing. or understanding it properly, or without using your own agency. Now, this I need to ask. I'm sure you have discussed this with Dr. Andy. This passive presence, it looks like a safe kind of way of being present, because you are not engaged in power, and you are not competing for power, and you are not a center of attention. uh, you are just doing things from a sideline, from the space of invisibility sometimes. So in a culture that is becoming increasingly toxic, that seems to be a safe place, but it is not. I tell you why it is not. There is this Jewish scholar by the name of Anna Arendt. He wrote a book by entitled Eichmann in Jerusalem. It is her own observation and kind of coming up with some social theory and philosophical principles from what she observed from the way one person is treated. And she lived as a student in Germany during the Second World War as a Jew. And after studying philosophy for some time, and she felt that philosophical life is too much of a contemplative life. She felt that this is a time that needs not contemplation but active life, and she became active, and she became like an activist, but also a humanitarian, and she has been smuggling Jewish kids from Germany to France to Palestine and America and so on and so forth, to protect them from being taken to gas chamber. The Israeli intelligence group was hunting the Nazi leaders and then bringing them to justice. And what captured her imagination is one person by the name of Adolf Eichmann. Adolf Eichmann, at the end of the Second World War, he escaped to Argentina. He was living in a very obscure village in the outskirts of Buenos Aires. But then Mossad later on studied carefully where he is, and they captured him and they brought him to Jerusalem and put him in the court. But Anna Arendt traveled all the way to Jerusalem from New York, where she was living, to attend the court system, and she has been reporting to a newspaper known as a New Yorker. She was commenting on daily basis, but what she found out is that Adolf Eichmann was not a person who lived active life. He led a passive life. His job was very simple: checking the list of the Jewish people that he was given by his bosses and packing them into a car and delivering them to a gas chamber. Sometimes he would stand after he delivered them to a gas chamber, knowing that they are going to be killed, and he would cry for a few moments. And he goes back again and he packs people and delivers it to the gas chamber. That was his job. Very simple job. When he is asked by the court, he always would give only one response: but I was obeying the order. I was doing what I was told to do. In that way that he was saying, I was living a passive life. This is not my thing. I had to say yes to my bosses. And from that, in that book, Anna Arendt come up with a very powerful quote. He would say, the worst atrocities in the world has never been committed by evil geniuses. The worst atrocities in the world were committed by human beings who refuse to become human persons. Now, here there is this conceptual difference that she's trying to make. Human being and a human person are different for. Human being is to become a human being, you just have to be born, and you don't have to do anything. But to be a human person, you need to gain your agency. From human being, you become a human person when you develop that sense of personal responsibility. When you become to a stage where you can evaluate things and say no or yes based on your own principles and evaluation, you will become a human person. So for her, Adolf Eichmann was not a human person. He was just a human being. He would say yes to everything that his bosses are saying. So what I'm trying to say here is passive and cyclic life. In Africa, we live cyclic life many times because we need to embrace the mode of life that our forefathers are imposing on us. I have been recently supervising a PhD, I think from Zimbabwe. This PhD is about clergies in a certain church, in a denomination. I don't want to say the name of that denomination, who are priests and pastors in churches, but also tribal leaders. They embrace these two identities. When they come to the church, they lead liturgy in a Christian way. But then when they go to the villages, they sacrifice animals to please the local gods. And the problem is these people are torn in these two identities. On the one hand, they think that they are Christians. But on the other hand, if they abandon this cyclic African life that is imposed on them, because if their father and their forefathers are in this kind of cycle and they need to inherit, if they don't inherit, their social stand would be in danger. So they come to a state that they have to lose their agency in order to appease the culture. In fact, in Eswatini, when I was going through this catalyzing leaders program, there was a bright young man who is on the verge of graduating from university. At the end of I remember it was in a graduation day, he came to me quite nervous and sweating, so shaking. And he said, I might have made a mistake and I'm in a very, very difficult place. And I said, what do you mean? You have been quite bright and you have been contributing a lot for conversations. Because he's sort of outspoken and very articulate, and he can challenge ideas and probe and ask questions. I was really happy that he was in the class because he was very willing to learn. He said, I applied for this program because it said it is a leadership training. But the motive that I came to this training is different. I said, what do you mean a different motive? He said, my father has got a business. What kind of business? He said, a traditional business. What do you mean a traditional business? Well, my father is a traditional doctor. And I have been being groomed to inherit that traditional witchcraft, that skill. So I came here to add more leadership skill in order to run my father's witchcraft business. Now, being exposed to biblical teaching, biblical wisdom, biblical principles, my worldview is challenged. After knowing this, I cannot possibly go back to my father and to inherit his business of witchcraft. But on the other hand, he said, If I am not able to inherit this, I'm his only son. I for sure know that I am going to be excommunicated from the family and extended family. So that challenge is real in our. This passive presence is dangerous because it brings you to a space that you have to embrace. Think scrutiny, proper interrogation and evaluation. Let me progress quickly. Volatile presence is a presence in which that this boy is finding himself. He is disoriented. His worldview is challenged. He is now has to kind of reconstruct his life because the biblical truth came here and hit his life, and his life is now in a kind of a state of disorientation. But also there is some dynamism and movement to this. It is unsettling. It is a space that you could find yourself in a crossroads. It is a space in which you need very, very, how do you call it? Even-handed sort of guidance and mentorship in order to be able to, for you to be able to find your way. If in this dynamism and volatility, especially young people can go either way. That is why we need mentorship. That's why we are trying to combine the CLT with the conceptual analysis and understanding, but also with mentorship and prayer and formation. The last aspect is one, after you go through this volatile life, you find your way and you settle in. You have got your own framework. You gain your own agency. You become intentional about change, not only in your life, but in a wider society, in your professional life, in your church. But also you deploy this creativity because now you have got your freedom. You have gained your freedom. With regaining your agency, also you will find your space of creativity to be yourself, and you will become change oriented in your existence. So that is why the aspect of presence is important to understand this evolution. Now, let me give you a few minutes. I'm sure you have already groups formed, just to share among you what is your unique talent that came with your presence and with your existence, that you think it is a unique, genuine God's gift to you, and how do you intend to use it to transform your culture and your society, your workplace. And let me leave that for Dr. Andy to organize the group conversation. And now it is we have got 13 minutes at the top of the hour at 12. If we come back to push further conversation, that would be nice. Dr. Andy, all over to you.
Not working. Yeah. So from my group, someone said writing and communication. That's a unique talent. And so she said she had a broadcast channel whereby she said she loved telling people about how to discover purpose, giving people direction and wisdom. So for example, one of us, she has written a book, whereby she wrote she wrote she wrote things on purpose, friendship, and how to discover your talent. So that's one of the ways she's using her gift to bless lives. And also at the other end, we have someone who said she loved counseling, giving direction, and also giving the word of wisdom. So, and she said, through our gift, she has, counseled many youths, giving them direction and helping them to solve their self problem. That's it. Thank you very much.
Oh, okay, that is every group that we've gone around there. I'm not sure how well you were able to pick that up, Girma.
A couple of them in the first stage escaped me, but I had the last three of them. But that is enough because of the time limitation. It's good that we move to the next stage. Can you hear me now?